Camera has to be on at all times. Thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Good morning, team and judges, and welcome to the fourth match of the 2021 National Tourism Debate online via Zoom. We're also streaming on YouTube. We would like to commend our production team at One Love TV for this fabulous Saturday morning setup, and to thank our judges for being here, as well as our students, coaches. We would like to thank the following companies: the Tourism Enhancement Fund in the Ministry of Tourism, Camco Hotel and Restaurant Supplies, Deja All-Inclusive Resort, ProSight Optical, Tony Ward Auto, Royalton Luxury Resorts, the Jamaica Observer, Ad Intelligent Limited, and Chaka Caribbean. The 2021 National Tourism Debate is endorsed by the Ministry of Education, the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce, the GHTA, and CGM Gallagher. Our judges this morning: Attorney at Law Stacey Young, Chief Judge; Cheryl Bromfield, Communications Director in the Ministry of Education; and Clinton Pickering, freelance journalist. Our moot for this morning: foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. Proposing the moot is Wolmer's Boys High, and opposing the moot is Ocho Rios High. Our speakers are Wolmer's Boys, Melvin Jarrett II, first speaker, and our second and third speaker, same person, Javon Hyman. Ocho Rios High, first speaker, Josh Brown, second speaker, Leandra Harris, and third speaker, Charlon Reed. The first speaker is allowed 7 minutes, second speaker 5 minutes, and the third speaker 3 minutes, followed by our rebuttal, which will begin with the opposing team. The match will begin with our opposing team, Wolmer's Boys. We will now proceed with our fourth match, Wolmer's Boys versus Ocho Rios High. Can we have our first speaker from Wolmer's Boys, as well as a spotlight? Go ahead, Wolmer's Boys.
Are you saying that I am to begin?
Go ahead, Wolmer.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. A pleasant good morning, Mr. Speaker, adjudicators, government bench, and opposition bench. There is a lot of ground to cover, so I won't waste a moment. The motion states that this House believes foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. So before I even get into the status quo on this matter, there are two huge question marks to address here. What are foreign public transfers, and what are unionized tourism carriers? Now, for foreign public transfers, you would be forgiven for not knowing. A foreign public transfer is, for our purposes, a transportation service / company that originates outside of a country of reference, but starts operating within said country. The most pertinent examples being Uber and Lyft. The next definition is a bit more intuitive. Our unionized tourism carriers are organizations of licensed transportation transporters that focus and provide transport in tourism industry. For example, transport from airports to hotels, or to and from tourist attractions and hotspots. Now, currently in Jamaica, we have two prominent tourism carriers, well, two major ones at least, JUTA and JCAL, the Jamaica Union of Travelers Association and the Jamaica Cooperative Automobile and Limousine Tours, respectively. It is also to be taken of note that currently, Uber, one of the big scares in this conversation, is currently, or is supposed to be currently, operational in Jamaica. Now, on to my first point. Uber, and by extension, any other foreign transfer, are not exempt from our laws and regulations. As stated before, Uber is already operational in Jamaica, and there are lots under the misconceptions surrounding it. Many theorize that due to Uber's own wordings, that it would take the Jamaican market by storm, which like it did in the US. This belief is predicated on the idea that anyone in Jamaica with a car would be able to be a carrier or leaser as they term it by their words. And I will admit, if this was the case, I would rest my argument right now. There would be no denying that if anyone could effectively be a taxi person, the market would indeed be changed. But despite Uber's clever wording, no such thing will happen on our shores. According to the Observer, on June 16th of this year, if Uber is to operate in Jamaica, it will be subject to our transportation laws and regulations. The Transportation Authority goes on to say that with vehicle lease or not, right? Vehicles with driver lease agreement, which is how they term it, is a new designation in the local the public transport landscape, and may not eliminate the need for the company to engage licensed public transportation operators to provide its ride-sharing services locally. This means that Uber in Jamaica will not have its trademark edge on the market of infinite supply of drivers at their beck and call. They will, for all intents and purposes, just be another taxi service. And before anybody talks about their digital edge, which may not be to their advantage, mind you, other Jamaican services like other Jamaican services are just as interactive digitally, like Ride Jamaica, who deliberately advertise themselves as an Uber in Jamaica before there was an Uber in Jamaica, which has many operators in the same way which operates in the same way Uber will be forced to operate now. And I don't hear a single soul talking about just Drive Jamaica and how it will affect our unionized tourism carriers. And Uber will effectively just be another fish in our huge pond of competing carriers. Now, onto my second part. Foreign public transfers do not offer the same benefits as unionized tourism carriers. Now, this can be interpreted in many ways, but for the purposes of this argument, we will analyze how it affects the drivers, right? If anyone were to argue along these lines against our motion, they would have to assume that the greater option, which they may see as the foreign public transfer, would attract people away from the tourism carriers and to that foreign public transfer. But I aim to prove that not only is our local option more viable for our people, but even if it is the case that they are equal, which they are certainly not, it will not affect how our carriers operate with the tourism union, tourism transportation union. So to make this point, let's use an example. JCAL, which to many people, it would surprise them, operates internationally as well. I had originally intended to begin in a way where we kind of match how Uber and JCAL have, similar qualities, but in all my metrics, JCAL supersedes them. JCAL guarantees that all drivers and tour guides are tourism board trained and certified and have been known to assist drivers in actually getting this certification. Their insurance covers both locally and internationally for both motor vehicles and public liabilities. While according to insurance.com, Uber's coverage leaves excess liability coverage for people which may increase their out-of-pocket expense, and doubles even more so if the car is damaged or totaled. With JCAL drivers, they openly admit that their drivers are a part of their system, part owners. There is no such promise under Uber. And Mr. Speaker, we use Uber here because it's an affluent company. It is the flagship company that will come here and try to do these things. So for all intents and purposes, if they are, as I described them, then other companies that come afterwards will be no exception. Right. So, Mr. Speaker, in this debate, what I have done, just to recap, I have debunked the notion that Uber will be operating on a different playing field from us or our local carriers, providing an example of a carrier that already is in the niche of Uber, and have also debunked that Uber is better for these drivers. If Uber affects our tourism carriers, then the opposition could argue that a pothole would. So with that, the proposition rests.
Thank you, first speaker, Melvin Jarrett II. We will now have Ocho Rios High. May we have a spotlight on Josh Brown, please? First speaker, Ocho Rios High.
Madam Speaker, honorable judges, opponent makes.
One second, you sound a little muffled. I don't know if you have to, can you do a mic test, please? Mic check, Josh?
I check 1, 2, 3.
Okay, you may have to just increase your vocal a little bit because you seem to be far away. If the judges can hear you, then fine. Right. Thank you, coach. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, please.
Madam Speaker, honorable judges, my opponent teammates, ladies and gentlemen in the virtual space, good morning. I take great pleasure to be standing here today to open the arguments for Ocho High School. I am baffled as to the stance that my opponent have taken. I understand and I express sympathy. Ladies and gentlemen, before I go into my arguments, let me use a few of my minutes of my own time to define the key terms in this move. These, my teammate and I identify to be 1, foreign public transfers, 2, will not, and 3, unionized tourism carriers. In identifying the term foreign public transfer, we substitute transportation foreign transfer. And this is defined as a system of transport for a passenger available by the use of general public, according to the article Public Transport published in 2021. In arriving at a comprehensive definition for foreign transfer, we look at transportation that are used by foreign countries. We found some popular ones: Uber, Hive, Curb, Get. So taking all this into consideration, we define foreign public transfer as those based on transportation companies that are currently located in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and other countries in Europe, Central and Northern America. Will not, as defined by your dictionary.com, is used to indicate future non-occurring action. Unionized, according to Oxford Dictionary, is belonging to a trade union. Based on this definition and the context of this move, before us have defined the combined term of unionized tourism carriers as tourist transportation companies specialized in transportation of tourists in Jamaica. Some of these include Juta Tour, Maxi Tour, and Jakarta. Taking all these definitions in mind, as team opposition, we rephrase the move to be read. Be it resolved that entrance of base overseas transportation company into Jamaican transportation sector will affect the transportation company specialized in carrying out tourists in Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, as first speaker, I will show you the entrance of base transportation
of information
in the transportation sector. Most of it already existing tourism carriers. Secondly, I will elaborate on how the familiarity factor will bear on the choices of tourists and how it will affect existing tourist carriers. My second speaker will look at the negative economic effect of base transportation company will have on tourist existent carriers, as well as how these company advancement in technology will affect tourist choices. While my third speaker will cement our stance by looking at Vision 2030. and prove some practical solution to rescue the already existing tourist carriers.
Point of
Ladies and
information.
gentlemen, why does this debate arise? The Uber app has been available in Jamaica since 2021. And Uber is the main threat of transportation companies across the world, as currently operated in more than 630 cities and provide 1 million service rides since 2015. In countries that they operate, they offer better, cheaper, faster transportation services. For example, in Croatia, where Uber has been operating since 2015, fare is sometimes $40 cheaper in comparison to the regular taxi fares. Based on my limited knowledge of business, as I'm not a business major at Ocho High School, or my parents are not a business magnet. But in business, there is competition, and whenever a company that enter the sector that offer the same service as other company, they will pull customers. And depending on how good their services are, they will pull majority of the customers. And based on statistics I present above, in the country that base of transportation company are operated, they offer better services than taxi services in these countries. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the entrance of Uber-based overseas transportation company into Jamaican market must affect existing tourist carriers here in Jamaica, regardless of how many years they will be operating in Jamaica. For example, according to a research done by Lena Pipic, published in the journal Actor Economic in 2017, media outlets all around the United States began reporting that in the late 2017, that the Uber was taking over taxi operation in major US cities. They are getting more rides than traditional taxi services. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, same reality will occur in Jamaica. Another reason why we believe that the entrance of base overseas transportation company in Jamaica will affect existing tourist carriers is the familiarity fact, according to Minister of Tourism Ed Bartlett in his 2021 sectoral debate in the House of Representatives on June 24, 2021. Jamaica welcomed approximately 4.3 million visitors in 2019, with the majority of these visitors coming from United States, Canada, Europe. I highlighted these facts to my opinion as Uber and other transportation-based apps have taken these markets by storm. Our tourists are familiar with these app-based, and human nature, we are inclined to choose and work with what we are familiar with. Right, thank you.
Thank you both. First speakers, Melvin Jarrett, second, Wolmer's Boys, and Ocho High, Josh Brown. We will give our judges some time to deliberate, and then we will go on to our second speakers, starting with Wolmer's Boys, Javon Hyman. Chief Judge Stacey Young, you can let us cue us when you're ready for the second speaker.
We can move to the second set of speakers.
Okay. Wolmer's boys, Javon Hyman, can we have a spotlight on him? Thank you. You can go ahead, Mr. Hyman.
Okay. Madam Speaker, adjudicators, my worthy opposition bench, fellow government members, and of course, all those viewing, a pleasant morning to you. I, Javon Hyman, as Deputy Prime Minister, have comprehensively analyzed and am adamantly supporting the motion foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. Mr. First Speaker of the Opposition, I'd like to start by asking if you agree with our motion, and if so, why did you restate it? Also, sir, it's not the opposition's place to restructure the motion. Also, we earlier disproved that it will be the same in Jamaica by saying it will have to follow our laws, meaning they can't cheapen the market by flooding it with regular drivers. Let us address the opposition's claims put forward thus far, that Uber has operated in many countries, is cheaper, and is better overall. We, the proposition, are of the opinion that the opposition needs to analyze the situation, not in terms of how successful they are in other countries, but how effective they could be in our country of Jamaica, keeping our economic situation in mind. I will be addressing this motion from an economic vantage point through exploring one, digital literacy of Jamaican people, through the fact that digital literacy of Jamaican people is low, which will affect how they interact with Uber. Two, Uber, as well as other PFTs, already has Jamaican competition in the form of charter taxis. Let us begin with the fact that the digital literacy level of Jamaican people is indeed low, which will in every way put a damper on how we as a people will be able to interact with these foreign public transfers. Let us not forget that our Caribbean island of Jamaica is still a third world country with an economy known to be one of the slowest growing economies in the world. And my dear opposition, you must be cognizant of the fact that our country does still rely on agriculture, mining, and tourism for growth and development. So members of the opposition, given our economic situation where the majority of our citizens are low-income primary sector workers, why is it that you are of the opinion that enough people would even be of faith with technology for these foreign public transfers to have any real effect? Simply put, many of our Jamaicans would not at all be able to go about making arrangements with these first world foreign public transfers due to their system not accommodating the digitally illiterate circumstances of the everyday Jamaican man and woman. The truth of the matter is that the Jamaican citizens who are digitally literate enough to make use of foreign public transfers already have vehicles for themselves, thus would not rely on the PFTs such as Uber or Lyft. Whereas the majority of Jamaicans who would like to make use of these PFTs would sadly not be of the digitally literate level to do so. Now, segueing into the second point of why foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. This is due to the fact that Uber already has Jamaican competition in the form of chartered taxis. A main example being on-time taxi services, which provide the same services as foreign public transfers, transporting people to and from locations. However, they do this without a high digitally literate requirement, thus making the process simple and easy to all Jamaicans. I reiterate the fact that foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers due to the irrefutable fact that one, digital literacy level of Jamaican citizens as a whole is low, which will affect how they interact with Uber. And two, Uber and other foreign public transfers already have Jamaican competition in the form of charter taxis, such as on-time taxis, which we Jamaican citizens are happy to rely on due to its simplicity. I shall close by imploring the opposition to think realistically, keeping in mind the digital literacy level of our citizens as a whole. The proposition rests.
Thank you, Javon Hyman of Wolmer's Boys. We will now spotlight or second speaker from Ocho Rios High, Leandra Harris. Leandra, I think that's Charlon, Leandra Harris. Okay.
Well,
Excuse me, I have a bit of a concern that they're not able to hear my point of information when I ask them.
no, right. There's also the fact that we can hardly see her. Is it that she's a little vertically challenged? We can't see her face. I realize, right. If you can you, yes, I can see her. The reason why it's important to see her face is because her delivery is being judged as well. So like her style, voice, gestures, and stance. So that is why it's important for us to have a visual view, to have a view of how she does her presentations. I don't know if she's able to do it at a closer range. You can if you want to close the camera for a minute to set her. Oh yes, that's better. We can see you very clearly. Can you manage to do it from there? You're comfortable? Okay. The other thing I realized that maybe it was because of the distance. Your first speaker was not able, I believe. Mr. Brown, were you able to hear anything from the mic? Because I believe there was several attempts for point of information. Were you able to hear any of them? No, I realized he didn't hear. Are you able to hear clearly now, Leandro? All right.
Need a mic check with Leandra because I'm not. Leandra, can you give us a mic check, please? You seem very soft. Speak, just speak. I am Leandra. Right. Okay. All right.
Yes,
so
we can hear you.
Go ahead now, Leandra.
Honorable judges, my most learned opponents, team members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, I join my first speaker in strong opposition to the moot, and it is resolved that foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. My first speaker has already laid the foundation for the opposition. As a second speaker, I will continue to show you without no reservation or apology that foreign public transfer entering the Jamaican transportation system will affect unionized tourism carriers. I'll be focusing on two areas: the negative economic effect that foreign transfers within the Jamaican market will have on unionized tourist carriers, and how the technological advancement of foreign transfers will affect the choice of tourists in selecting transportation. Unionized tourism carriers have dominated the tourist transportation system for decades, with JUTA being established 1974, MAXI in 1984, and JCAL 1972. Many men and women have made their livelihood from serving as drivers in these companies. In recent times, many have seen their livelihood and economic situations decrease gradually with the introduction of all-inclusive hotels and the provision of transport services by these hotels. Mr. Speaker, foreign public transfers will put a further dent and will cripple the economic earning of these unionized carriers. In 2001, when Digicel entered into the Jamaican market, Telecommunication of Jamaica Limited, which was renamed Cable and Wireless 1998, had dominated the telecommunication sector for over 121 years prior to Digicel coming to Jamaica within a few years my opponents. Because of offering better service, being more advanced and offering more variety in choices, they took over the Jamaican market, currently holding 53% control. We believe that app-based overseas transportation companies will have the same effect on current unionized carriers. My opponents, app-based overseas transportation companies are more advanced technologically compared with the old-fashioned ways of doing things by unionized carriers. For example, Uber and other transportation app companies have an app uses a big data system as a foundation for its technologies. These apps give you the power to get where you want to go with access to different types of rides, colors, different types of vehicles. You use the app to request a cab and they get to your desired location right on time. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, in January 2015, 68% of tourists who came to Jamaica were between the age group 15 to 44. Mr. Speaker, are among the Gen Z generation. They're among the technological generation. This generation, Mr. Speaker, will fuel the next technological revolution. These individuals are those who use apps to shop for transportation, use apps to shop for clothes, use apps to shop for food,
Points of
use apps
information.
to hotel rooms, as it makes life easier. You, my opponents, are app savvy. You and I are among this Gen Z generation. It is a fact, Mr. Speaker, not an opinion, not a guess, that we prefer the easier way of doing things. Foreign public transfer offers an easier way of booking transportation. It allows visitors to stay from the comfort of their rooms on ships or in the hallways of airports to book their rides, rather than being harassed by unionized workers, desperately fighting and sweet talking and trying to lure you into their Boston cars. In addition, these carriers use a cashless system where passengers can pay using their credit or debit cards. Because of technological advancement of foreign public transfer, unionized carriers, tourists will be affected. We rephrase the mood for our benefit, so don't be rude, my worthy opponents. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. We have heard from both second speakers and we will give our judges some time before we move on to the third speakers. Sorry. Chief Judge, are you ready?
Just another minute, please.
Okay.
Judge Bromfield, I can't see you to know if you're ready. Can you just give an indication by voice? Judge Pickering, can you just indicate by voice your readiness to proceed, sir? I just.
Okay, I'm seeing that they're ready. You may go ahead. Wolmer's boys, Javon Hyman, filling in for the third speaker.
Okay. All protocols observed. Good morning. This government is resolute in its stance that foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers. I will be focusing on the safety and insurance JUTA and JCAL offer. However, I shall start by reiterating what has already been cemented by we, the proposition. Our Prime Minister gave the status quo of Jamaica, destroyed any notion that Uber or any foreign or any FPTs will be operating on a different playing field than our other Jamaican couriers. Provided an example of a courier that is effectively an Uber substitute operating in Jamaica. Destroyed any notion that Uber has better drivers and has shown that even if drivers do drive with Uber, it will not affect their position in the union. As well as the fact that even if the opposition argues that FPTs will affect Jamaica's unionized carriers, they may as well argue that potholes will do the same. Our second speaker addressed the fact that foreign public transfers will not affect unionized tourism carriers due to the irrefutable fact that one, the digital literacy level of Jamaican citizens as a whole is low, which will affect how they interact with Uber. And two, Uber and other foreign public transfers already have Jamaican competition in the form of charter taxis, such as on-time taxi services, which we Jamaican citizens are happy to rely on due to its simplicity. Okay. He also implored the opposition to think realistically, keeping in mind the digital literacy level of our citizens as a whole. Now, it is extremely important that we take note of the safety and assurance which JUTA and JCAL provide to Jamaicans as well as tourists. JUTA and JCAL have been in the business for years. They have the requisite vehicles in all locations needed, and people are aware of the level of safety which they provide. It is important that your opposition keeps this in mind, because due to this is the main reason why the FPTs will not be a major option for the Jamaican citizens or tourists, since we already have groups, we already have unions that are doing the service well. So we the proposition rest.
Thank you very much. Third speaker, Wolmer's boys. We will now move on to Ocho Rios. Hi, third speaker, Charlon Reed. Mr. Reed, can we have a spotlight on you? And you may go when you're ready.
Judges, my worthy opponent, teammates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My task as third speaker is to cement the arguments of the opposition. We have shown without a doubt that there is no way the entrance of app-based foreign transportation companies in the Jamaican market will not affect the already existing tourist carriers in Jamaica. We understand that sometimes when tourists come to Jamaica, they are here to experience our culture, but at the same time, chaos. Disorganization is shunned, and sometimes individuals can't do better, so they work with what they have. Uber and other app-based companies are more organized. easily accessible, and they too offer the tourists to benefit from our culture, as the drivers will also be Jamaicans. In approaching this debate, we, the opposition, were not dogmatic, and we are not saying that Uber and other app-based transportation companies should stay out of the Jamaican market. We are strong believers in Vision 2030, and part of that vision is to have an inclusive, world-class, distinctly Jamaican tourist industry that is a major contributor to social, economic, and cultural development. The inclusive part of this would include app-based transportation companies. Mr. Speaker, Uber and other companies entering the Jamaican market may not be a bad thing after all. So even though it will affect unionized tourist carriers in a negative way, it may serve as an opportunity and motivation to propel unionized carriers to improve on their services and offerings. They may shake up the status quo and cause these unionized carriers to make significant changes to diversify and modernize their approaches. As such, Mr. Speaker, I now put forward a few recommendations that unionized carriers could implement. One, a more organized approach towards tourist bookings and arrivals, instead of the current crab-in-barrel mentality that is displayed at airports and at ship docks. The unions that represent these workers could put a website in place where tourists can go to and make their bookings, with the options to rate the services provided by these drivers. Two, like Uber and other app-based transportation, they could also implement an app system which will make it easier for tourists to book their rides and see the variety available to them to choose from. In conclusion, with the points that I had given, I do believe that I was able to convince you all that Uber coming to Jamaica will not be a bad thing, that Uber coming to Jamaica will not be as bad as we think. Of course, it will have its negative impact on our unionized carriers, but at the same time, it does give us a leeway to improve our unionized carriers and to make it more superior to Ubers. Thank you all for listening.
And thank you, speakers, for a wonderful presentation. We will give our judges some time and we will now break for you to prepare for your rebuttals.
Ready to proceed?
Thank you. We will now begin with the rebuttals with Ocho Rios High. Can we have a spotlight on Ocho Rios High for their rebuttal, followed by Wolmer's Boys?
In summary of arguments, my first speaker looked at what foreign transfers are. He showed you that these are app-based transportation companies that have taken the world by storm in the last 15 years. Secondly, he showed you that because tourists are familiar with these app-based transportation companies when they travel as tourists. I would have looked at the negative economic effect that foreign transfers within the market will have on tourist carriers and the technological advancement. My third speaker looked at recommendation to improve already existing tourist carriers in Jamaica. There is no way, Mr. Speaker, that app-based transportation companies entering the Jamaican market will not affect the already existing tourist carriers. Mr. Speaker, you said they advertise, but most tourists do not listen to that advertisement channel because it is not in their original country. My opponent, we are not saying that Uber drivers are better. We are saying that the companies they're working with provides better service because of the advancement in technologies. Second speaker, the Uber offers different service from on time. They are cheaper. They offer more choices, type of vehicles. Secondly, my opponents, this debate is not about local transportation for Jamaica, normal citizens. The move refers to tourist carriers. So you cannot compare on time with Uber in this debate. If this debate was about locals, then we would have agreed with you. We would have agreed with comparison with Uber, and on time, we have not changed our stance, Mr. Speaker. We still believe that app-based tourist carriers will affect unionized tourism carriers already in Jamaica. Third speaker, again, I remind you that this debate is not about locals. So the digital literacy of locals should not be a part of this debate. We know that first world countries are advanced in technology, and therefore will choose technology over confusion or outdated practices. Again, judges, we stand to lose that in our stance, overseas app-based companies will affect unionized tourism carriers. Thank you very much. Please take in mind of my summary.
Okay, opposing Team Ocho Rios. Hi, thank you. Wolmer's Boys, you may go ahead.
Good day, Mr. Speaker. Good day, all. And quite honestly, I am both enraged and saddened at how we portray our unionized tourism carriers. These people slander them with words like disorganized or hurried or badgering as if they're harassing tourists. And that's simply not true. But let's take things one step at a time. The first speaker defines, these foreign transfers and then goes on to say how they take other countries by storm, but neglects our argument completely. We have outlined quite clearly what our government itself says. These people will not be operating in the same way they do in America, which is one of the key examples he gave, or in other countries. They will only be able to pull from the market of people who would already qualify to be taxi operators. They need that license. And as for the argument as why we are bringing up, our normal citizens, the normal citizens and these tourism carriers and Uber and these foreign transfers are inextricably linked. They cannot make earnings from tourists alone. It is not viable. they will also compete or attempt to compete with our local market. And thus we have to analyze what the local market is, right? Take into account, I would challenge them. Uber is here. I would challenge them to tell me an anecdote or a statistic that says that our market is being eaten away and that these unionized tourism carriers are losing money. I would love to see that because it is not there. They cannot find it. All right, we have to go back to some of the suggestions that the third speaker made now, because I would like to know which world they're living in. I have outlined that these people, these are alternatives, already have apps. If apps are the thing that they're worried about, apps are already here. You want a rating system? It's right there. Look on their website. You want to schedule a meeting abroad? It's right there. Look on their app. These things exist. Jamaicans are not backward. How can the second speaker give an example of Digicel and telecommunications in that era? They were providing better services. What better service is Uber and Lyft providing? You have not named any. Our carriers are better for the people who serve them and for the tourists. I had mentioned that they are trained professionals that tour and guide these people. And I've mentioned how the insurance coverage is better. And this was not refuted by the opposition. I cannot sit here in good conscience and let them run away with that notion. Thus, I had to explain it to you. We are modern. We do have resources, and they will not come in here and do the same thing that they've been doing elsewhere. So we reject fervently, and we will continue to reject that they will affect our unionized tourism carriers. And I thank God for our unionized tourism carriers because they are doing a good service for us and for Jamaica and for the tourists that come here. With that, the proposition rests.
Thank you, both Ocho Rios and Wolmer's boys, for a wonderful debate. It's Saturday. I know some of you would have preferred to be out and about, but we're here and we thank you for the effort. We thank the coaches for all that they have done and the judges this morning for showing up and ensuring that they're here to follow everything that you're saying. I will allow our chief judge to deliberate with the other two judges, freelance journalist Clinton Pickering and Cheryl Bromfield, Mrs. Bromfield from the Ministry of Education. We have 23 persons with us this morning in our chat room. I don't know if we have anybody. Well, I am sorry, I will have to come off for a minute.
Feel the pulse, feel the vibe, feel it in your heart.
Sunshine smiling warm up inside your heart. Feeling of pure love. Oh, Jamaican heartbeat. Dancing to the beat up inside your heart. Heartbeat of the world. Oh, Jamaican heartbeat. Jamaican heartbeat.
Jamaica.
Can you feel it? Jamaican heartbeat.
Love it.
Heartbeat of the world. Beyond compare. Nothing like it anywhere. Share, eat and drink. We move and dance with you. No matter where you are.
No matter where you come
No
from.
matter where you're from. Join in the party. You're welcome.
Me a laugh,
You're
smile.
welcome.
Chop. So me say greetings, welcome to one and all, to the land of scat, reggae and dancehall. There we go beach, river and waterfall, and we have a lot of party when the night fall. Hold a vibe, eat something with a drink in your hand. Rum beer, jerk chicken, roast fish, yellow yam. Them say we beat unique, so every boy, every girl come to Jamaica, the heartbeat of the world.
Jamaican heartbeat.
Jamaica.
Can you feel it? Jamaican heartbeat. Heartbeat of the world.
And thank you for tuning in. That was a lovely video, one that I quite enjoyed from the Jamaica Tourist Board. It shows entertainment, travel, and everything. Easily accessible online. And speaking of line and technology, as you know, we're working in a virtual space and things can go wrong from time to time. Unfortunately, we had a JPS power outage at one of our judges' location, who is far away from us. And so we are going to ask the coaches if we could get a little time for her to see the final speaker. We would probably need, we're not going to ask you to stay online. We don't know who is on Wi-Fi and who is on data. So we could just invite the link, and we perhaps could come back at about 12 o'clock. I think that should be good time for them to look on YouTube, watch it on YouTube. The match is being streamed on YouTube and it's recorded, so it's nothing for us to go back and just look at a few points there. So Coach Ocho, Rios, Mackenzie, and Miss Vernon, is it Melvin? Sorry, let me just look. Neil Morgan from Wolmer's. Can we resume at about noon so that we can make the announcement? We want to be fair. We want to be fair to everybody. And so we will definitely have to watch the last match. The judge has to watch that last match speaker so that she can get that point. Coaches?
Good morning again. I have no opposition to that, Ms. Toro.
Right. We want to be fair. We want to be fair. So we would ask that. I don't believe that the power is back as yet, but I think by noon, she should be able to see the final part of the match. Coach Mackenzie?
No, we have no objection to that.
All right. So the link is going to be, I don't believe the link is going to share, Daniel and Jamie. Jamie, can we use the same link? We'll just keep the meeting open, or are we going to resend? All right. Okay, so we will notify you in the coaches group for sure. And at 12, we will see you again. If the students have to leave school, we understand. Is Ocho Rios there at school now? Is that school? Is that school? Well, at this point, you can, if you have to go home, you can Zoom in from home. We would want to keep you at school for 2 hours. There's no lunch break on a Saturday. So we will meet again at 12. All right. Wolmer's, are you okay? Wolmer's boys?
Yes, we are.
All right. So you guys are at home, so you just turn it off a bit and we will be back at 12. Thank you so much. Thank you to our judges for being so fair with the marks. And we will come back at 12. All right. Thank you so much.